All right, so let's dive into something that's been causing a lot of debate. The XL bully ban over in the UK. It's been a year now since it went into effect, and
Yeah,
you sent over this article about it, and some pretty strong reader comments too. So I think it'd be really interesting to take a look at what's actually going on beyond just the headlines.
definitely.
What's really got my attention is this idea that the ban might not be working the way they intended it to
Right.
England and Wales.
Mm.
They put it into place to try to reduce dog attacks,
Right.
but the police reports aren't actually showing any decrease.
Yeah.
And in some areas, it seems like they're even going up.
Yeah, that's something you see pretty often with these breed-specific laws. They tend to focus on certain types of dogs without really getting at the root of the problem, which is, why the aggressive behavior is happening in the first place.
Right. And the article even uses this woman, Lisa Willis, as an example. She was attacked by an XL bully after the ban was already in place.
It's a really powerful reminder that just because you ban a breed doesn't mean the streets are automatically going to be safer.
Yeah. And get this, the article mentions that the owner of the dog that attacked her replaced it within weeks.
Wow.
So if it's that easy to get a similar dog, does the ban even really do anything?
I mean, that's a great point. It really shows how hard it is to enforce a ban like this. The article even mentions that police officers need special training now to tell if a dog is an XL bully or not. That puts a lot of strain on resources.
Oh, sure. And then on top of that, you have all these banned dogs ending up in shelters. The article was saying that kennels are totally filling up. What kind of effects does that have?
Well, shelters are already usually struggling with being overcrowded, and then when you suddenly have all these banned dogs coming in, it puts even more pressure on them. It can lead to having to make some really tough decisions about, euthanasia. Or even in some cases, dogs might be released early just because there's not enough space, and that, of course, puts the public right back at risk.
So it kind of seems like this ban is causing some problems that they didn't expect.
It does, and it makes you wonder if we're too focused on the breed itself and not enough on responsible ownership.
Yeah.
Training and understanding dog behavior are so important, and those things often get overlooked.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Which brings us to those reader comments that you were talking about earlier. People definitely have some strong opinions on both sides. One commenter, Ariana Sloan, she calls the ban a failed experiment.
Yeah.
She even compares dog attacks to like a cancer ravaging our communities.
Wow. I understand why people have such strong feelings about this, especially if they've been directly affected. But it's important to remember that we need to look at data and have a broader perspective if we're going to come up with solutions that actually work.
Right. Another commenter, Emery, brings up a really interesting point, though. They say that it's not about the breed itself. It's about irresponsible owners. And I think that brings up a really big question. How do we balance personal freedom with public safety when it comes to owning a dog?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a tough one to answer. There's no easy solution. But I think part of it could be things like having stricter rules for owners, like maybe mandatory training for certain breeds, or public education campaigns about dog behavior and responsible ownership.
That makes sense. But some people say that even with training, some breeds are just naturally dangerous.
Hmm.
We had another commenter, Wyatt, who actually suggested that dog owners should wear bite-proof suits. Obviously, he's joking. But is there any truth to that?
Well, I have to admit that one made me laugh. But it does point to something important. Prevention is key. Think about it. We don't wait for car accidents to happen before we start talking about seatbelts, right?
Yeah.
Right? We need to be more proactive instead of just reacting after something bad has already happened.
So what would that look like? I mean, how do we actually do that?
Well, one thing is to encourage responsible breeding practices so you're less likely to have those aggressive traits passed down. And then another thing is to focus on early socialization for puppies. Exposing them to different sights and sounds and experiences when they're young can really help to prevent fear and aggression later on.
Yeah, it's like giving them a good foundation from the start.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's training. But it's not just about teaching them to sit and stay. It's about teaching owners how to understand their dog's body language.
Yeah.
Like, what are their triggers and how to respond in a way that keeps things from getting out of control.
So it's really about giving owners the knowledge and the tools they need to really get their dogs and prevent problems before they start.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of responsible ownership, where
Mm.
people understand that having a dog isn't just a right, it's a privilege and a responsibility.
That's a really good point. It seems like there's a lot more to it than just focusing on the breed.
There is, and these comments from readers really show how complicated this whole issue is. It's clear that people care a lot about keeping the public safe, but also about the well-being of the animals.
You mentioned Lisa Willis's story before. It's just awful to think that even with the ban in place, she was still attacked. The article didn't go into a lot of detail, but it did say that the dog that attacked her wasn't on a leash.
That's something you see in a lot of dog attacks. It really shows how important leash laws are and making sure people actually follow them. Even if a dog is well trained, there are always situations that could make them react in a way you don't expect. A leash gives you that extra bit of control to keep everyone safe.
It's about managing the risk and not just assuming that every dog is going to be perfectly behaved all the time.
Exactly. And I think that brings us back to this idea of needing a multi-pronged approach. We need responsible breeding, early socialization, ongoing training, good leash laws, and public education that reaches dog owners and everyone else too.
It seems like it's going to take everyone working together. Breeders, owners, people who make the laws, even people who don't have dogs, but share public spaces with them.
Definitely, if we want to create an environment that's safe for both people and dogs, we need to have that shared understanding and commitment to being responsible. And we have to be willing to look at the problem from all sides.
This whole discussion has really made me think about how complicated this issue is. It's definitely not as simple as just banning one breed.
It's about recognizing that while some breeds might be more prone to certain behaviors, it's ultimately up to us humans to manage those behaviors and keep everyone safe.
You've given us so much to consider. What do you think all of this means for our listeners?
It means we all have a part to play in making our communities safer. Whether you're a dog owner yourself or just someone who sees dogs out and about, understanding these issues is so important.
We can't just rely on bans or quick fixes. It's about educating ourselves, being responsible owners, and speaking up for policies that focus on preventing these situations and addressing why dog aggression happens in the first place.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive was focused on the UK, but dog attacks happen all over the world.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just something that's happening somewhere else. It's happening right here, too.
And that means we all have the power to make a difference in our own communities.
So as we wrap things up, what are some specific things our listeners can do?
I think it starts with just being more aware, educate yourself about how dogs behave,
Right.
learn to read their body language, and understand why early socialization and training are so important.
It's about being proactive instead of waiting till something happens.
Exactly. And if you're thinking about getting a dog, really do your research. Choose a breed that fits your lifestyle and be ready to commit to training and socializing them properly.
What about people who already have dogs? What can they do to be more responsible?
Well, make sure your dog is trained properly. Make sure your yard is secure so they can't escape. And always use a leash when you're out in public.
Even with the best training in the world, things can still happen.
That's true. Dogs are unpredictable sometimes, and that's why being a responsible owner is so important. It's about knowing how to handle those unexpected moments and do what you can to minimize the risks.
And it seems like it's not just about what individuals do, but also about pushing for bigger changes.
Absolutely. We can support laws that promote responsible dog ownership and encourage education and prevention programs. We can also volunteer at shelters, donate to organizations that are working to improve things for dogs, or even just talk to people in our communities about why responsible ownership is so important.
It's easy to get caught up in all the fear and negativity around dog attacks. But you've really helped us see all the positive things we can do to make things safer and better for everyone.
That's what I was hoping for. This is a complex issue, but it's not hopeless. With knowledge, responsibility, and a little bit of compassion, we can really make a difference.
This deep dive has been so insightful. It's given us so much to think about, both for ourselves and for our community.
And I hope it encourages our listeners to keep learning about this topic, asking questions, and getting the information they need to make smart decisions about how they interact with dogs.
That's a great point. So on that note, we'll leave everyone with that challenge. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and remember, knowledge is power. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep learning.